All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, for anybody who watched the Orange Bowl on Thursday night, they know that both Notre Dame and Penn State left it all out on the field. And although that both of these teams played well enough to win, only one squad is moving on to play for the national championship in about 10 days, and it's the guys from South Bend. Now, Notre Dame went down at the half by the score of 10-3, and they should have been thankful because they were dominated in that first half, especially in the second quarter by Penn State. The Nittany Lions dominated in the trenches on both sides of the football as the Fighting Irish could not stop Penn State's offense. And the Nittany Lions defense was relentless in their pursuit of Notre Dame quarterback Riley Leonard. Relentless to the point that Leonard briefly got knocked out of the game late in the second quarter. And in doing so, Penn State's defense really was not prepared for Notre Dame backup quarterback Steve Angeli, who rallied the Fighting Irish. He went 6 of 7 for 44 yards, and he helped Notre Dame get in the field goal range. They got that field goal just before the end of the half, and it kind of sparked them. Okay, and on top of that spark, I wasn't in that room clearly, but Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman must have given the speech of all speeches to his Fighting Irish at the half because they came out in the to start the second half much more physical. We saw Notre Dame march right down the field on the opening drive of the second half to tie the score at 10 apiece. And from that point, the momentum and the tenor of this game really changed. We saw the Fighting Irish eventually take the lead early in the fourth quarter on a spirited run by running back Jeremiah Love. Remember, this young man is out there playing on a bad knee, and he really left it all out on the field on Thursday night. We saw both of these teams go back and forth in the fourth quarters. Penn State and Notre Dame combined to score 31 points in that frame. And of course, Notre Dame making the key plays coming down the stretch, intercepting Penn State quarterback Drew Aller with the score tied, and they basically, won the game in walk-off fashion with Mitch Jeter's 41-yard field goal with about 10 seconds left in the contest. Throughout, we saw Notre Dame's resolve, and at the end of the day, that is truly a tribute to their head coach Marcus Freeman, who once again answered the bell, and of course, on the flip side for Penn State and head coach James Franklin, it's another loss against a top five team. Now, Franklin was outcoached on Thursday night by Marcus Freeman. And of course, the folks in Happy Valley don't want to hear that because they're going to say, wait, how many times in this situation or in these situations is James Franklin going to be outcoached by the guy on the other sideline? And it wasn't just James Franklin. Riley Leonard, the Notre Dame quarterback, outplayed his counterpart for Penn State and Drew Aller as well. Now, there was some talk. We all know that Drew Aller has agreed and committed to come back to Penn State for 2025, but there was still some murmur that he could possibly still come out of school ahead of the draft. But honestly, in watching this game and how he handled himself against this stellar Notre Dame defense, no disrespect, but this kid is not ready for the NFL as yet. If you go back and watch that game from Thursday night, Drew Aller was never comfortable in the pocket throwing the football from the word go as he was off. Some of that can be attributed to Notre Dame's defense. Some of it may be jitters, but the bottom line is Drew Aller didn't have it. He was missing running backs coming out of the backfield. He keyed on Tyler Warren a lot throughout this game. He missed him on several passes. A lot of times he was forcing the ball to Tyler Warren, and it sometimes looked like he was aiming the football, throwing into double and triple coverage. He had that interception towards the end of the game, which of course catapulted Notre Dame to the win, but nonetheless, he forced the ball across his body. Two interceptions that he got bailed out upon due to penalties. Oh, okay, by Notre Dame's defense, but balls that should not have been thrown, balls that were thrown in a double and triple coverage, balls that he let sail on him. And at the end of the day, Drew Aller's play really hindered Penn State's chances to get to the championship game. He was just 12 of 23 passing for a buck 35 with zero touchdowns. And not aside from the costly pick, early on in this game when Penn State had the momentum and they had to settle for a chip shot field goal, he missed Nicholas Singleton on a wide open touchdown pass that really came back to cost Penn State in this game. But again, big game James Franklin comes up short again as he only has one win against top five teams throughout his career, and the losses are continuing to mount for him. And it's just unfortunate because you look at it, and Penn State, they killed Notre Dame in the trenches, and they, in the second quarter, and they only had a 7 point lead to show for it at halftime. And once the Irish scored to begin the second half, it was a new game. Okay, Penn State lacked explosiveness in their passing game throughout this contest, and it's one of those. I've talked about it before. I'll continue to talk about it, whether it's recruiting, whether it's the transfer portal. James Franklin has to change his approach at the wide receiver position. You think about Penn State's program under him; they're pretty taken care of at the other positions: offensive line, defensive line, linebacker U continues to be that way. The same thing for the running back position and in the secondary. And he's also found quarterbacks who fit his system. But if you look at the teams that he consistently comes up short against, Michigan when they had Jim Harbaugh, okay, Ohio State first with Urban Meyer, now with Ryan Day, and then of course, in this contest right here with Notre Dame, you know, you would imagine having more explosiveness at the wide receiver position would change that, and that is something that the Nittany Lions have to address going forward. They're good enough to get to this expanded college football playoff. They're good enough to win games in the playoff. But of course, the further you advance in this tournament, the more the microscope is going to be on you, the tougher it's going to be to advance. And you're going to need those playmakers in order to get you over the hump. And Penn State continues to lack that. And the thing is, you look at James Franklin's record overall, it's pretty stellar at Penn State. We're talking about a guy that is 101 and 42 overall at Penn State. He's 64 and 33 within the Big Ten. He's won a Big Ten championship. He's gotten Penn State to two Big Ten championship games. But you look at it, three losses this season against top five teams. Okay, the Ohio State loss in Happy Valley, the loss to Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, and then of course the loss this past Thursday night to Notre Dame. I mean, he's done everything else. He brings in money to the school. He consistently gets Penn State to big bowl games. He's gotten them to a pair of Fiesta Bowl wins. They've gotten to the Cotton Bowl once. They've gotten to the Rose Bowl a couple of times. They've gotten to the Orange Bowl, of course, this time around. But it's just his inability to get Penn State over the hump in those big games. And of course, that is going to continue to be, a blemish on his record. And it's unfortunate because you're talking about a guy who's third all time already on Penn State's all time wins list for head coaches. Only Joe Pa and Rip Engel are in front of him. And of course, I anticipate James Franklin, surpassing Rip Engel very early into next season. And it's only going to be Joe Pa ahead of him. But it's one of those things the naysayers are going to continue to say, yeah, but you can't win the big game. That's going to be the biggest thing. James Franklin's not going anywhere. When I say he's not going anywhere, for anybody who thinks that Penn State should move on from James Franklin, it's not happening. I mean, A, the money that he would be owed, and B, on top of that, the guy wins. It's just a fact that he just simply does not win the big game. But somebody in Happy Valley needs to sit him down, though, all jokes aside, and talk to him about changing his approach and adjusting his system in order to get those guys, especially at the wide receiver position, that could possibly get him over the hump. But on the flip side, okay, to the victor goes the spoils, and this right now, it's all about Notre Dame. They're headed to the championship game. They as of right now, they're a heavy underdog to Ohio State. I'm sure that the folks at Notre Dame don't mind that because so far Marcus Freeman has done a tremendous job for that program. His players believe in him, and it's one of those where you know you have to throw seeding out, not just for Notre Dame but for Ohio State. And I've talked about that in recent weeks because we're talking about and of course in the case of Ohio State, they came into the season ranked in the top five. Notre Dame finished the season ranked in the top five. And Marcus Freeman has done a tremendous job with his program now. It's his program. It's no longer Brian Kelly's program. A lot of the guys that were part of Brian Kelly's program long gone now. And it's one of those where Marcus Freeman has put his stamp on this program. And you look at a guy, he works hard, his team works hard. And it was one of those things I feel like nobody has really had their finger on the pulse of their program, kind of in the fashion that Marcus Freeman has Notre Dame following that Northern Illinois loss. A lot of resolve from this team, a lot of grit, a lot of toughness, and that right there is the embodiment of their head coach. So, like I said, Notre Dame's going to be heavy underdogs against Ohio State. That's fine by them. But you know what? If anybody thinks that the Fighting Irish are going to roll over in that game, think again. They've got their $20 million check for getting to the championship game, but it's not just about getting to the natty for them. They want to go out there and win their first championship in about close to 40 years. Marcus Freeman is going to have his team ready to play that day. I know that Ohio State has a lot of flash on offense. They can bring it defensively as well, and so can Notre Dame. The bottom line is you better buckle up your chin straps because I think this is going to be a phenomenal championship game with a ton of paint swapping. Notre Dame, they've shown a lot of resolve in this tournament. We saw them get past Indiana in the first on-campus game in the college football playoff. We saw them take care of Georgia, albeit Georgia didn't have Carson Beck, who is now with Miami. And then, of course, the grit that they needed to come back and scrap with the Penn State Nittany Lions. But nonetheless, this was a phenomenal Orange Bowl. You had two great teams, both deserving to win, but clearly there was only going to be one winner. Two of the more iconic programs in college football, two of the more iconic uniforms in college football. Those plain white helmets of Penn State always stick out. And the same thing can be said about the Golden Domes for Notre Dame. But Penn State, it's a long trip back to Happy Valley as their season has come to an end. Of course, Abdul Carter has already declared for the draft. I would imagine Tyler Warren will be there as well. Both of these guys that I mentioned are more than likely or should be top 20 picks in April's NFL draft. But for the Fighting Irish, they're going to continue to roll on. Penn State, they're going to be right back in the mix next season. Okay, they're going to be right back in the mix for a playoff spot. James Franklin's team ain't going nowhere. And when I say ain't going nowhere, they're not going to fall off of a cliff and not be relevant in the world of college football. The Nittany Lions will be a top 20 team at the very least to begin next season. And of course, for Notre Dame, they've made their way through South Bend. They've made their way through New Orleans. They've made their way through Miami. And now they continue their journey through the Southeast, whether you want to call it ACC country or SEC country, whatever. But they're heading to the heart of SEC country in about 10 days for the national championship game. 60 football minutes is all that stands between Notre Dame, or should I say 60 football minutes, and a very tough Ohio State team at the same time. That's all that stands between Notre Dame and the national championship. But nonetheless, it's been a phenomenal college football playoff so far for the Fighting Irish. It's been a phenomenal college football playoff so far in general. The culmination is about 10 days away. Notre Dame is still standing, and let's see if they have what it takes to be the last team standing and be crowned as national champs. But folks, that is going to wrap it up And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow B at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I'm signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.